Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have you with us today. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If you're having any trouble hearing or seeing the video, please feel free to reach out to Stacy and she can provide you instructions on accessing the audio or the video component. We have the pleasure of talking with Laura Ramirez today. And I am so excited to be able to have a conversation with her and get her perspectives. If everyone could just put their microphones on mute so that we make sure there's no background noise during the conversation. But we do want this to be interactive and we will have opportunity for you to ask questions throughout. If you do have questions, please feel free to send them again to Stacy, and she can filter them through and send them to us, and we will have about 15 minutes at the end of the conversation for us to walk through those questions that you have. So we can go ahead and I think get started, and as people trickle in, they can join in and continue to connect with us. So first I'll start just by introducing myself. My name is Jared Fitzpatrick, and I have been on the Canaries team since August of 2019. I'm focused on our user engagement and outreach areas. I also lead culture and HR strategy for the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. And most of my experiences focuses on culture transformation, diversity, outreach, and talent acquisition, as well as organizational transformations and strategy consulting. I spent the first about 5 years of my career actually working as a management consultant with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Huron Consulting Group before I moved full-time into diversity and inclusion and culture work. And when I made that career transition, I quickly realized that a lot of the diversity and inclusion initiatives that I saw didn't lead to the outcomes that they were hoping to achieve. And the needle really wasn't moving. So I started asking, what's the solution here? What's the issue that needs to be solved, and how can we go about solving that? And that was the main reason why I found Canaries. And Canaries really is, I believe, the solution to a lot of the issues that diversity and inclusion initiatives and companies are facing. So we know that about 75% of diverse employees don't feel like they personally benefit from diversity programs of their employers. And a lot of that shows that there's huge gaps between expectations and reality for diversity policies, procedures, and trainings. Canaries is a platform with a mission to improve workplace culture and to foster more inclusive environments. And a lot of that is through allowing individuals to anonymously rate their employers on issues related to the lived experiences of diverse employees. And when I say diverse employees, I'm talking about women, people of color, people in the LGBTQ community, religious minorities, as well as differently abled employees. And it allows companies to also share information related to benefits and other policies. And this is external facing, so anyone can go online and see this. So when companies partner with Canaries, they get an extra set of hands, eyes, and analytics to be able to understand how employee resources groups, professional organizations are using that personalized data and those really personal stories to create change, and actionable change, instead of these check the box initiatives. So if you have any questions about Canaries, what Canaries does, if you would like to see a demo of the platform, please connect with us. Stacy is on the line. We also have our CEO, Mandy Price, with us, and either one of them can answer questions either during the broadcast or after. So we always are looking for connections and are happy to share with you more about Canaries. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our featured speaker for today, the first in our series of webinars about diversity and inclusion during this COVID-19 crisis. Laura Ramirez is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Ericsson North America, and is responsible for Ericsson's diversity and inclusion corporate strategy. Her efforts around diversity and inclusion help to elevate employee engagement, employee experience, external brand, and attracting and retaining diverse talent. She even co-created the first talent acceleration program called RISE. Laura has helped to effectively launch 4 new employee resource groups and is privileged to lead all 7 employee resource groups at Ericsson. Her recent recognitions for the DNI efforts she's leading include being honored on the Forbes list of 2019 top employers of choice for diversity, being honored in the US Veterans Magazine, and being ranked in the top 100 for diversity by Mavens. Prior to joining Ericsson, Laura spent 17 years at AT&T Global Headquarters in Dallas. She held various roles within human resources, finance, business marketing, business solutions, and even worked directly with the chairman and CEO, Randall Stevenson. Laura also led AT&T's women's and Hispanic Latino segments, talent development, and corporate partnerships. In addition to all that, Laura is a TEDx speaker and is considered a thought leader in her field. Most recently, Laura was recognized in the 2020 class of DCEO Magazine's Dallas 500. This is one of Dallas-Fort Worth's most influential group of leaders in business. She has also been featured in the Latina Style magazine as a Latina in STEM on a mission to empower the future. She's also been featured in D Magazine's DCEO's A Day in the Life and the Room at the Top article in USA Today, Hispanic Living magazine. Laura was selected to participate in the first Dallas cohort for Mujeres de ACE, Women's Leadership Development 12-week program. In addition to her passion for work, Laura also enjoys giving back to the community. She serves on the University of Texas at Dallas Diversity Advisory Council. She is a member of the Plano Culture and Inclusion Alliance. She is a DNI advisor of Brian's House, and she's the co-founder of the DFW Alliance of Latino Leaders. To top it all off, she is also a Guinness World Record holder and has received the President's Award for her volunteer work. She currently resides in Dallas with her 2 young children, Lily and Diego, and she enjoys spending time with her kids, going to the movies, volunteering, cheering for her kids at the soccer field, and going on family vacations. So please, thank you for being here, Laura, and everyone in the audience, give a virtual hand clap for Laura Ramirez.
Oh, Jared, thank you so much for the introduction. And again, don't believe anything that he just said. No, I'm just Laura Ramirez. I'm your humble servant, and I'm honored to be invited to be here with Canaries, just to share, Jared, your passion for DNI and my passion, and everyone on the call, our passion together. I think it's more powerful as we unite today. So thank you again for the invitation, Jared.
Absolutely. We're so honored to have you with us.
Thank you.
So Laura, I want to go ahead and jump into the questions because I know we have limited time, and I want to make sure that we have some time for our audience to ask questions as well towards the end. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and would love to hear your honest perspective here, the COVID-19 crisis or coronavirus has changed the way fundamentally that organizations operate all over the world. So how are you adapting to this new temporary norm, and how are you seeing employees, organizations, and communities adapt to COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think there's going to be 2 times in our era right now. There's going to be the time before COVID and the time after COVID. And right now we're in that temporary phase. For me personally, what I'm doing, I had to pivot like you and like everybody else probably on this call. And you have to be agile during this environment because there's so much uncertainty. There's so much things that we just don't know. And the extension from us working from home, it's just being prolonged. So at this point, we don't know what it looks like. I'm extending myself grace to others. What I mean by that is knowing that if I see a child that pops up behind me when we're on a virtual meeting, that's okay. Extending grace to my children as well, because now, right, they're having to work from home too. They're my new coworkers. For that, I've set up my own workspace at home for my children as well. I've set boundaries to say, okay, these are my work hours, and this is my life hours, because we can get lost right now during this time, and it starts to blend. And when does work end, and when does life begin? So I'm setting boundaries for myself and my children as well as we start to adapt to this. What I'm seeing in companies, they're shifting their business models. We're seeing that more every day now that's happening. If you think about how are we serving our communities and our first responders during this time? I mean, we're seeing bridal shops now stop any process or making gowns, and now shifting to make face masks and gowns for our first responders. And those are the things that we should be doing. Car manufacturers are halting production on vehicles and now trying to solve solutions for respiratories that we might need. Those are the things that we want to see within our community and our businesses. I've also seen our communities coming together in true unity, thinking about how can we get our kids online schools, working with the city council, working with corporations to make sure that our city, each of our cities, are well taken care of. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty right now, but I've also witnessed, Jared, that human compassion. I've seen that right now so much. People are scared, people are afraid, but I've seen those great acts of humanity and empathy that our people are demonstrating during this time. And then leaders from all walks of life, all different industries coming together as well. We've seen a lot of shifting to videos. Those are some of the tactical things that are happening. I've seen an abundance of email communication that comes through. I think we're overcompensating, in my opinion, on the emails that we're seeing, but I'll talk a little bit more about that, Jared.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your personal. I think there is a lot of truth to that fact that you have to be okay with extending grace to people, even when the kids come in the background or they have to end a call early because of something going on in their house life. And so I'm glad that you said that. So as a DNI leader, so moving over into more of the professional side, what actions are you taking to foster an inclusive culture for your team and for the ERGs that you lead to keep them engaged?
Perfect. So for me, I'm very mindful. I'm mindful of people's personalities and the way they receive and are dealing with the situation right now. Again, there's just so much going on in the world. So I really try to make it a point that I'm accommodating to everyone that I'm meeting with. I don't switch video on everybody because I know everyone incorporates or processes things differently. So I make my video meetings optional, right? So they can switch on their video if they want. I don't say, everybody, let's join via video. I don't do that because I want to make sure that I'm meeting their expectations during this time, and I'm meeting them where they need to be, okay, versus what my needs are. I also try to show compassion. Every meeting that I start, Jared, and my team can attest to this, I'm asking people, how are you feeling? How are you today? And what I've done now that's working really well is started a round table at the beginning, no matter what my agenda looks like for that meeting, a round table of what's top of mind for you, for them, because I want to know about that information. And then so after we've all shared input there, then we can go into our agenda if everyone feels comfortable. But a lot of times I know that people are just talking, hey, how are you dealing with this? And we're sharing best practices before our meeting, which has been very helpful. I'm also offering virtual connections with people that just want some social time and don't want to talk about business, but say, Laura, I want to reach out to you. I want to talk. I want a distraction. So I'm also offering those virtual connections with people just so that we can connect socially. The way I'm staying connected with my ERGs, I make it a point to send an email. Actually, I even sent them all a text on Sunday for some of the stuff that's happening. And just to make sure that they know that I'm thinking about them as well. We are in the process of trying to sort out solutions, right? Virtual experiences for our people. So there'll be more information to come on that. But again, we're really thinking, how are we as an ERG community, how are we supporting our people, our members? So those are things that we're in the process of doing, Jared. So more to come. You'll hear more information on that.
And one thing that you said, I think because you did the work on the front end of building those relationships before all of this happened, it made it a lot easier for you to continue to maintain those relationships instead of having to restart them or start them from the ground. So it sounds like that's a credit to you of taking the time to make sure that you're investing in those people and those relationships. Even though there was no necessarily need to do that, you did that on the front end, and so now it's paying dividends for you, which is fantastic.
Jared, thank you for saying that. I appreciate you calling that out. I think right now it's especially ideal for everyone. Any relationships that you've had, this is a time you can nurture those relationships, because you just don't know, right? And when you unify your team and your people and your ERGs, beautiful things happen from that, right? I mean, if there's someone that that might need diapers, and hey, this person needs this food, or my neighbor needs something, that's when you really can come together. And it goes beyond just the everyday work 8 to 5. It's really those relationships that matter the most to you. So thank you for calling that out. Thanks, Jared.
All right, so my next question, our platform Canaries leverages data on several different diversity and inclusion metrics, and can actually tailor metrics to align with the company's needs and the metrics that they're already tracking, all in the hopes of helping that company to make more strategic decisions. So how are you using or leveraging your data, feedback from your people, and reflections from this current situation to benefit Ericsson?
Right, and I'm so thankful for Canaries, for the tool that you already have, for those 5 areas that we can leverage, all our people can leverage from any company, not just a corporation. But if I think about education, if I think about, healthcare as well, DNI topics are relevant to everybody, right? And so if I think about, I previously mentioned when I start a call, it's to really make sure that I'm asking people their input on how they're feeling for the day, because that, by me doing that, Jared, I'm already getting a pulse check of my people, right? So I'm being very intentional with that question, because if I start to see someone typically behaves this way, but because of COVID, that person now is acting a different way, is this person being isolated, or do they feel isolation? There's clues that you can pick up on just based on that one question. So with that feedback that I'm getting already, I do make it a point sometimes, not all the time, right? Because I don't want to beat this information down, but to let my people know that, we have some great benefits within our package. And if they need those resources during this time, for whatever reason, right, to please reach out, because right now is when we need to come together, and we're not passing judgment on anybody, because we're all dealing with this differently. If you think about our cognitive thinking, diverse thinking, our personality types, everything, there's so many variables right now that plays into that. But right now I'm gathering the data. I know that Ericsson is thinking of launching a pulse check with all of our people, just to see, how we are doing as a company during this time. And I think from that, we'll be able to extract some very good data points. I don't have those at this time, but we'll be able to extract some data points to determine how well, as a company, we're navigating, managing through this process. Also, I'm actually using this us working remotely from home as a use case. This is a great use case if I think about building a business case for why potentially being able to work from home remotely, why that's a benefit for our people. I mean, we're seeing every organization right now, we had to pivot quickly, right? We had to shift, and our businesses are still, managing. We're still, working through those priorities that we had mapped out for this year. Now, some things might be a little delayed and slowed down, but again, all of us can see that we did make a pivot, and we are still adhering to our priorities that we had mapped out for the year. So I am definitely looking at this data as a data point for a use case for working from home to allow more flexibility for our people. At the end of the day, that's what what our people want, not under these circumstances at all, but that is something that, we've heard a lot of people asking for more so. And again, why not collect this data right now, and use this example that we're all going through as a use case for your business as well.
I love it. I love it. And hopefully we will get a chance to see some of the insights after you get to do the pulse survey, and would love to see what comes out of that. But okay. So we recently posted an article on the Canaries blog about how the Chinese virus stigma impacts inclusion for employees of Asian descent. And for those who may not be familiar with that, so the president mentioned the coronavirus during one of his addresses and called it the Chinese virus. And that caught a lot of momentum and has just further shown that there's a lot of racist and xenophobic feelings towards people of Asian descent during this time. So what are you doing to support and protect your employees of Asian descent?
So, as a DNI professional, it just breaks my heart, to be honest with you. I mean, racism any day is no good, right? We don't want that. But especially to see racism happen as a result of a virus that no one could control, that just makes it even worse, that everyone is already afraid, they have stress, they have anxiety because of this. But on top of that, they're now experiencing racism, whether it's physical attacks or verbal attacks. And that's just, it breaks my heart to see that. And so when I saw that first happen, my ACE, Asian Connections, ERG, and, I asked Evelyn, what do we do? What can we do? How can we help? Right? Because I don't want them fearing for themselves or their lives or their family lives. How can we help? How can I help and support this? Is it through education that we need to do? Is it through, what resources and tools can we now share with our own employees, but externally as well, to help break that stigma, because that's an incorrect stigma. And so we're working through that right now. And, I think all of us on this call, we have that more obligation to do our part within our own companies. I mean, you wrote that great article, Jared, you did for Canaries. I read it. It's fantastic. I see a lot of other articles popping up. You're doing your part. Canaries is doing their part. We're trying to do our part. But I encourage everyone on their call to do that. How can we collectively combat racism on this? Because it's at no fault of anyone's. And we're all fearful. And what happens is when people just don't know about something, Jerry, they're afraid. And they act on that fear. Fear is translated into racism. And no one should experience that. And that's our as DNI leaders and HR professionals to help.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad that you talked about the fact that everyone has a role in this. It's not just about DNI professionals, but whether your DNI have DNI in your title or not, this is still your responsibility to make sure that this type of stuff doesn't happen.
Absolutely. And I'll just say this also, Jared, when I'm, we're going out, all of us, only on the central runs for food. But if I see a first line person right now, I think it's a superhero at the grocery store, and I don't see the person with a mask or gloves, I'm asking the manager of the store, where is their protection? Because if I think about African American and Hispanic Latinos, the majority that are working at the grocery stores right now, are they also protected? So again, we have the more obligation to call that out. When we see the happening, how are they being protected? Is their organization protecting them? If not, why? I text city council members when I see that's happening. And I know my city council member he's quick on it. He's quick on it. But again, we all don't turn a blind eye when you see those disparities happening right now, because we're seeing that more often than not. This is a time when we need to speak up.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'll just do a quick plug. If anyone does not know their city council member, please go and find your city. You can do a Google search. You can quickly find your city council member, and their information is there. You can text them. That's great. I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's so great that you're doing that.
Thank you, Jared.
The next question I would ask there is just many HR and DNI professionals are experiencing a lot of uncertainty and pressure about their budgets and the future of their programs. So what are some crucial things for HR and DNI professionals to consider during this time?
Yeah, so it's again we're all feeling this, right? This is something that only yourself or myself are feeling this, everybody on this call and everybody on this call is feeling this, the results of COVID. And I know that we have a lot of work to map out what our strategies and the priorities are going to be for 2020, and they look pretty. And those were approved, our budgets were approved. Now COVID's happening. And we understand that there's other priorities such as humanness and keeping people alive during this time. And we realize that now is when we have to pivot. Myself, I know that there was priorities that I had lined up until, for the whole year, but now I'm trying to figure out what are those virtual experiences that I can now make for my people to keep them engaged, to keep them connected. I know that, I don't want to lose any momentum that we've built in the last couple of years, and that could happen during this time, this scary time, right? So how do I stay connected with my people? Know that your budget might be cut. I mean, that unfortunately is a reality. And so you have to pivot. You have to now start preparing for that to actually happen. Be proactive in that stance instead of reactive. Start to reevaluate what your priorities for the year are. Do that now, because that's really going to help shape up what the rest of the year looks like. Again, none of us know at this point when we're going to be able to return back to the office. None of us at this point know when we're going to be able to have our very first event in person for our people. We don't know that. There's a lot of unknowns at this point, but start thinking about that. Also, unfortunately, there might be impacts to our workforce. We might start to see a little bit more people either getting furloughs or getting laid off as a result of this. But that is a reality that we face, unfortunately, and we have to know that might happen. But the whole point is, how do we communicate that to our people in a way that it's sensitive, that we know that this isn't the best ideal time, and our hearts go out to them, but we know that this might happen. So start looking into that as well. I mentioned, early on, extending grace to our people. Be flexible with their hours, right? Let them determine what are their best work hours. I'm starting to block out, breakfast time, lunch time, and then a time for me to leave so that I can have those time with my children. Because guess what? Now I'm a chef. Now I'm a teacher. Now I'm a PE teacher as well. So I have to give myself grace as well, so that I, don't exert my brain either, right? I have to stay healthy. Healthy means so many different ways, so many different things for so many different people. But again, I have to extend grace to people, but I'm hoping that they also extend that to me as well. Always remember, the work hours, it's not one size fits all, especially now during COVID. Unfortunately, we're having people that everyone's being impacted. They know someone that has this. They know someone that's dealing with that. Think about it, Jared. Right now, people are having to be virtual caretakers for their loved ones. They cannot be in that room when their people are in the hospital or dying. Think about that. Extend grace to those people, because we don't know those situations, and maybe they're not comfortable enough to share that with us, to say, you know what, I have an aunt who's there, or I'm the caretaker for my parents. But let's make sure that we're extending that flexibility and giving them that opportunity to share and trust us. Okay? Be mindful of mental health. People, just manage anxiety differently and stress, depression. Again, just be mindful that our people of the resources that our company has to offer during this time. Okay. Also, be considerate of personality types, Jared. Not just you, but everybody, because everybody navigates through this differently. You have the extroverts, you have the introverts, you have the ambiverts. But remember that everybody's so different. We're not the same. One size does not fit all. Embrace those video calls. We want to stay connected. We're hearing people say, stay connected. But we also don't want it to be forced. We want it to be authentic. So we need to make sure that we're allowing our people that say, I don't want to put my video on. Is that okay? Absolutely. Respecting their boundaries as well. And so I think that, we need to ask, what are your preferences and how do you want to engage with me during this time, versus assuming that, just because I might want videos, everybody else does. That's unfair, and we should never think that way. Also, ensure your people with disabilities that they have the necessary accommodations to work from home during this time. Those are things that maybe, you haven't thought about so much. But if a person is suffering, let's say from a back injury, and now they don't have the right ergonomic chairs or desk settings, make sure that you are communicating with your people. And if they need those accommodations, let them know that they can reach out to you so that you can secure those for them. Because we want to make sure, Jared, during this time, everybody is able to work from home and feels comfortable about their environment. Again, everyone was thrusted into this environment, but we should make sure that we are accommodating to them. One other thing that I want to make sure that I share with everyone on the call, and I know we have probably going to go over, but think about your company's brand. Think about your brand also. What does that mean? Are you gaining trust with your people right now? Are you opening those lines of communication so that your people can trust you during this time of uncertainty? The way a company responds during a crisis, the way a company supports their people during crisis, and the way the company gives back to the community, it says a lot about a brand. And Jared, after this, after COVID, after this is all said and done, we'll be able to see those companies that really stepped up to the plate, that really supported their people, and that really gave back to their community. We're seeing that already. And those are the brands that are going to just amplify. And those are the companies that I personally will think of as a top employer of choice, because they're putting the profits aside to do the right thing during this time. And that's being human and giving back and being compassionate to others. So start building that trust. And again, think about what your brand looks like as a person and as a company, as an extension of your company as well.
Ooh, preach. My Baptist upbringing was coming out there. I could feel that. That was
Thanks, Jared. Thank you so much.
I know we are at our time for our official portion of the conversation, and we've had a few questions come in. So I had one more question for you, and then I'm going to move over to some of the questions we've had come in from our audience. So my last question, once we get past this and it's safe for everyone to return back to the office, what recommendations or perspectives do you have for companies to prepare and support their employees when they physically return to work?
I think this question is really important because we're thinking about, how are we navigating and managing during this time? But there is going to be a time that we go back to our offices. We're able to go back into that. So I want you, and I encourage everyone to start thinking about, what does re-entry back to the office look like for your organization? What does that look like? Because everyone is very different. Some of your people, even though the city and the governor and the president might say, it's bad, it's okay, it's safe, you can go back. Some people might still be afraid, and we should respect that. We should take that into consideration and determine if there are different options for our people to gradually get them to go back into the office. And it should, again, it's not a one size fits all. Because if you tell me next week, Laura, it's safe to go back, I'm not going to go back, Jared. I'm not. I'm going to need my company to say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable. I need another week. So think about options. And I think, for those organizations that have veterans ERG, if you think about the transition, right, I think that would be just a great sounding board and focus for you to leverage, because they work through their transition periods. So definitely leverage your veterans ERG for this, because you need to start mapping that out, because again, one size does not fit all.
That's good. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
I'm going to yield on my questions and let some of the audience questions come through. And we've had a few so far. The first question that we had comes from, let's see here. I can't find their name, but I see the question. So the question is around the pulse survey that you talked about. This person specifically wanted to know what type of questions are you going to be using in the pulse survey? And if you don't have to maybe share these specific language for the questions, but what types of things would you want to be hearing from your employees?
Right.
We also recognize that, so Canaries has a tool to do the pulse surveys as well. We have some proprietary questions. And so sometimes you use questions that are specifically related to COVID or remote work. But what types of things do you want to gain from hearing from your employees?
Right. So I think that's a great question, because the survey itself, and again, you can do this pulse check whether you're on a call with somebody, but I think it says a lot about a company. Survey their people to say, how are we doing? And it's questions relating to the communications. Are you well informed on COVID? Do you feel safe? Right? I mean, the questions that you ask your people are just to make sure that, number one, that they feel secure, that they trust you as an organization, that they know you're managing the steps for them to ensure that their safety and well-being is number one. So my recommendation would be just leverage, if they can, your tool. That would be fantastic if they can leverage Canaries. But then also, I would say don't overanalyze the questions. Maybe three to four, no more. Because right now, it's not about the company. It's more so about the people. And just making sure that they feel safe and protected as an extension of the company. So that would be my recommendation. Keep it simple, but really analyze those questions that you want to get data from.
Thank you. And David Dixon asked that question, so thank you, David, for that question.
Thanks, David.
I appreciate that. So I saw an earlier question from Samuel Santiago, and it was in response to one of the pieces of feedback that you gave around tailoring your approach to, if you're not comfortable with video conferencing, allowing that person to just keep their video off and talk on just through the conference line. But Sam's question was, there are some times where you may not hear that voice, and if you're not following up with that person, you may be missing out on some really valuable input. And so how do you ensure that you're still hearing everyone's voice, even if there are people who may not want to be on video, or who may be comfortable kind of stepping away from some of the action when they're in a remote setting?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, because there could be the social isolation. So it's really your job as a leader, as a people person, to identify, is that because this person is dealing with the stress, anxiety, depression because of COVID, or is it just because they don't, there's maybe they just weren't necessary to this call, right? So we need to start thinking about that too. Jared, if I invited you to a meeting and you're probably thinking, why am I even invited to this call? I'm adding no value. This is the time when we start to analyze, number one, is this meeting relevant for this person? Don't just schedule meetings for the sake of scheduling meetings. And if you invite everyone on that call, and let's say one person hasn't spoken up, make it a point to say, you know what, Jared, I haven't heard from you today. What are your thoughts around this? Really engaging them in and bringing them to be a part of that conversation, and not just ignoring the fact that, Jared, you didn't on the call and he just didn't have anything to add, but really just asking, hey, Jared, we talked about this and this idea was brought up. How would you spin that, Jared? What are your thoughts? Again, engaging people. We have that obligation to do it. And again, if they're just relevant for the meeting, do them a favor and uninvite them from the meetings. They have more important things to do right now.
Yeah. And I think what you said there definitely answered that question from Sam, but it also answered, I think, another question that we got from Jomo Castro, which talked about how do you motivate employees to get engaged in this era of social distancing.
Yeah.
So the next question that we saw was from Melanie Munoz. Thank you, Melanie, for your question. And Melanie asked, some diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals are feeling the need to make themselves more relevant in this time, as HR has taken on the load from a functional perspective, thinking about processing leave cases and benefits and employee assistance programs and stuff like that. So how can diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals support their HR counterparts as they want to keep inclusion top of mind in the midst of all these different changes?
Well, and that's a great question, but I think that even before COVID, you should have established those relationships and partnerships way in advance, right? And if you haven't established those partnerships, that's okay. But I think right now it's very ideal for you to do that, because if you think about, there's a lot of disparities happening. There's racism that has increased because of this, but it's really, I'm encouraging us, what can we do as from a DNI perspective? How can my ERG leaders educate, whether it's our HR team or recruiters during this time? Because if you think about it, we're still trying to attract talent during this time, but it's always looking at things through a DNI lens, never stopping, not even after COVID's done. I mean, what's right, and even though you don't practice DNI as a profession, you know what's right from wrong, right? And if there's priorities, and when you speak up and you know that it's the right thing to do, that's your obligation and that's your role in the DNI, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And it's sharing your perspective, feeling comfortable with your partners to be able to say, hey, you know what, this person, we hadn't considered this person, but let's bring them in, whether it's for, a new hire, or if you think about retention right now, layoffs might happen, really making sure that you're through a good lens versus just saying, you know what, we're just going to let this person go without having any true rationality behind it.
Good. That's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
All right. So I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Okay. Love the questions, by the way. Keep them coming.
Okay, good. All right. So we have a question here from Vicken, and the question is, what are some ways that Ericsson is leveraging the employee resource groups during this new normal and virtual work environments?
Yeah, so, I have the privilege of leading my 7 ERGs, and I just love that I can do that. For me, I sent an email because I know, again, a lot of them just don't know, and they're looking to me for help and support through this time. And I sent them an email last week to say, let's just, what experiences are we going to create for our members to keep them engaged, to keep enthusiasm, because we've done a lot in a couple of years, to keep the momentum going, because we don't want that to be sidetracked because of COVID. We understand, and we're going to be sensitive to what's happening in the world, but how can we still bring, whether it's education, a talent development session for our members during this time? Because right now is a good time to scale up if you think about it. I know one of my ERGs did a podcast, Ace did, right? So there's different things that they can do to help out their members during this time. And it doesn't just have to be about COVID, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking for a distraction, something other than COVID. And that's where we come in. And our ERGs are really, we're going to start some experimentation as well. There'll be a meeting later this week about that. So you'll for this. We're all trying to, but I have my 7 ERGs, and they're very smart. So we're going to come up with some really good solutions for our people.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask this one last question to you. Okay. And then I'll leave a little bit of time if you want to have any final comments to the audience. I want to thank everyone that did ask questions. I know we had over 100 people participating, so not all of the questions we're able to answer, but thank you for the people who did submit them. So this question that I'll ask you is, what are some of the resources, it could be websites, articles, blogs, podcasts, books, that you would recommend to other DNI professionals to stay engaged and uplifted during this time?
Yeah, so, those that know me know that I what I say is what I do, right? So I talk about trust a lot. And with my teams, with my ERGs, which is everyone, any interaction and people that I know, trust. So for me, let me just share. Sorry, Jared. So it's a book. I know people are probably saying, what does a book look like? It's a book. I mean, this is very important, especially right now. And I know I talked about, what does your brand look like from a company? And are your people, do they feel comfortable to say, you know what, I really can't see, I do have a disability, or I can't hear when I'm on conference calls anymore. I need the right information. So I think, the Speed of Trust book is one that's really, that I love. I also follow Tony Robbins as well for inspiration, motivation for me. Let me also share this one book. You see it? It's emotional intelligence. Yeah, I think right now this is a very good read, especially with everything that's happening, because we need to be strong for others, because at this point today, we just don't know what's going to happen. And what I mean by being strong for others, whether it's going to be a child, whether it's going to be a parent that you're going to care for, whether it's your team that's looking to you to lead by influence during this time, we have to have that emotional intelligence ready. And this is just a great resource, not just for today, right now, when we're combating COVID, but just any time during your career. I think that's really important to have that skill set, emotional intelligence, Jared.
I love it.
Great question.
Thank you so much.
Thank
so we're
you.
at time. Laura, I want to say thank you again for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. We appreciate it so greatly. I am blessed to know you, and I can't wait to see what you continue to do at Ericsson. Thank you to all the audience members. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to join us today. Our next webinar will be on next Tuesday, April the 14th, and that will be at, I believe, 2 p.m. And so we'll have another speaker, we'll have another topic. It will be related to the COVID-19 crisis, but we'll approach it from a little bit of a different angle. And then we'll have a couple of other webinars coming up over the next few weeks, and we'll release all of that on our social media. Please, again, go to our website, canaries.com, K-A-N-A-R-Y-S, and check us out. After that, I will kind of wrap this up. Laura, again, thank you so much, and I hope everyone here has a great rest of the day.
Yeah. And Jared, I just want to say thank you for everyone that joined the session today. Hopefully it was informative. Thank you to Canaries for the just fantastic partnership. And please reach out if you have any questions beyond today. Thank you, Jared. It was an honor. Everybody stay safe and well. Thank you.
Thank you.